Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Bill Williams in sunny Atlanta, Georgia. Good afternoon from here. We're fortunate to have Dr. Uche Odiatu from Toronto, Canada today. So we're going to have some fun and we're going to learn the secret to healthy longevity. And I want to cover some housekeeping before I introduce Uche formally. So let's move over to our sharing of the screen. And we're going to have the ability to look at what's important. With the Polynar series, right now we are looking at weekend number 6. The Polynar series that features clinicians, dentists, physicians, chiropractors, pharmacists, optometrists, medical doctors from the healing arts. So what we are is we are a group of doctors getting together to share continuing education with one another. We're part of the world's top 100 doctor program. Each year, the doctors are chosen to be in the top 100 by select criteria with their CVs and their accomplishments. So we're looking for more doctors to join. We have been for several years exclusively in the dental field, and we've expanded to medical, as we said, chiropractic, pharmacy, optometry, doctors of naturopathic medicine. So if you were interested in becoming one of the world's top 100 listed doctors, you may submit an application, a nomination. Those nominations right now are going for 2022. And we've been so overwhelmed with the number of dentists that have joined us that they've already filled 2022. We're looking for physicians, optometrists, chiropractors, pharmacists. As I said, more people that are in the program, the wider this thing grows. And this is a worldwide movement, not just a small thing. This is huge. And Dr. Kenner Shaw is the genius behind it all and has got 10 to 12 verticals growing to serve the patients better. Now, if you become selected to be in the Podnar as a speaker, like Dr. Uche today, you fill out a form. If you want to be a host with special criteria, you fill out a form. And if you're selected, if you have a product, a service, something that you have a specialty training in that you would like to share with the world, this is the platform. The platform that puts you in front of hundreds of thousands of doctors around the world. One of the things that we're promoting is Academy Teaching Platform because it will be released this summer and we're going to be teaching on that come fall. So I want everybody to write down this URL, trimurl.co/global summits. You might take a screenshot of this page right here, because what it's going to do is going to bring you into the inner circle to take advantage of this Academy teaching platform so that it not only doesn't cost you anything, you actually will have income generated by being a founding member using the latest artificial intelligence. Later on in July, we're going to have a whole program based on what this artificial intelligence will do for you, your teaching, your business, your practice of medicine. So keep an eye out, become a founder, join Dr. Kenner Shaw and I, and all the other doctors who become members of Academy and the On Passive movement. Now, our featured speaker today, Dr. Uche Odiatu, as I mentioned, is from Toronto, Canada, 20 years of practice as a dentist. He graduated from the University of Manitoba School of Dentistry, but he is more famous for being a personal training specialist, Canadian Association of Fitness Professional. He lectures all around the world. I've heard him in many venues myself, the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health, for instance, as a keynote speaker, a featured speaker, because of his acumen in the world of fitness. He is an author, a contributor to many journals, and I want to see tonight, I want to see the sonicate that he does at Team Training Institute. I can see that working now because I like the Sonicare system, and I want to see what Sonicate looks like, Uche. He's got a book coming out this summer on total body health, and he will mention that today. So without further ado, we're going to be talking balance of the mind, body, and spirit, starting a good plan for yourself, having and involving sleep hygiene. I call it healthy longevity, Uche. So the floor is all yours. I'm going to stop my share, and you can put up your information when you're ready.
Oh, there we go.
While he's getting that up, CE will be available. If you'll just look at the link that's in the chat, you can pick up the CE credits.
Hey, hi there, Bill. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. You know, I'm on fire when it comes to sharing these hacks I have. I think many people who are talented, they got genius, but working it with one hand tied behind their back because they're not hacking into the inner genius, the body. And the body has an inherent wisdom. And if you're going without sleep, going without good food, if you lead a sedentary life, and if you're doing a procedure you don't enjoy and you have a wellspring of knowledge in one area and you're not moving that direction, it takes your life force away. So when you think of Elvis Presley at the top of his game, you think of anyone at the top of their game, they were tapping in and they had all cylinders firing, you know, thoughts, feelings, and actions. And many people have great thoughts, but they feel they want to go ahead, but they're not taking action daily. And so the next 30, 40 minutes, I'm going to share with you what I do to get myself moving. And at a half a century of age, you know, I'm at the gym hanging out with guys half my age, and they would never dream I was the same age as their dads. And I don't do this to impress you. I wanted to impress upon you how easy it is. And I'm a big believer in easy, simple, effortless, sustainable, maintainable. It's not about looking great for, you know, in 2 weeks for your wedding, or to blow your buddies away at your college reunion. I'm talking looking good a year from now, a decade from now, a lifetime of now. Okay, that being said, you know, I want to take as many of you as I can with me. So if you join me on Instagram, I'm posting there all the time. And so whether it's on one side of the country doing yoga beside the Golden Gate Bridge, I want you to tap into your biggest reason, which is why. I think many of us have cosmetic reasons to do health. You know, people talk about, oh, now that I'm 39, or, you know, now that I'm 49, or now that I'm 59, 69, you know, what do I got to do? You know, forget the cosmetic reason. You know, as much as it's important, it's not sustainable. So I want you to dig deep into your why, and a powerful why is who needs you around. You know, who needs you at your best? Who needs you at your most enlivenedness, you know, with lots of energy, you know, compassion. That whole idea about, you know, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak is so true. You know, people have great intentions, but they're just not eating in a way that can service their goals and dreams. And they wonder why they don't make it. Meanwhile, it's not because they didn't take the right CE course, it's because they're not feeding their body what it wants. They're not resting their brain the way it should for creativity. They're not giving their immune system maximum advantage by having a good digestive system. So I want you to close your eyes. Anyone watching now, just close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Yeah, I mean you. I'm talking to you. Close your eyes. And just take a deep inhale. And I want you to think of someone in your life who needs you around, who needs you to be playing your A game. Okay, with your eyes closed, I want you to think of another person in your life who needs you. Who else needs you around? Maybe someone you didn't think of the first time. Now I want you to think of maybe a team of people who need you around, who need you at your best without apology. And not just for the short haul, but for the long haul. Okay, you got that? Okay, open up your eyes. So, you know, when you think of me, you know, here I am, you know, I have a 6-year-old, and the last thing I want is when I'm at the playground with him, is for people to ask me, is that your grandson? And that's the shallow cosmetic side. But really, you know, I want to be around 10, 20, 30, 40 years, possibly 50 years from now. The oldest gentleman that ever lived was 112 years of age. So why not? They always say shoot for the stars because you might end up hitting the moon. So that's me. I'm going to go for 113. So that being said, I'm going to take as many people as I can on this journey with me. So whether it's a live CE in the dental world, and everyone thinks I have this Navy SEAL, kick butt, CrossFit style program, but you leave that for the top, 0.05%. What I do is I make my fitness programs easy, sustainable, and if you were an athlete in college and you haven't lifted a weight or you haven't been on a stability ball in 30 years, my programs are easy. It's all about feeling confident. And then when you start feeling confident with your fitness, you start feeling relevant. And then when you start feeling relevant, you'll make more connection, chairside, bedside, in front of your audiences, in front of your team, because you'll have an energy that belies your age. So that being said, most people think of self-care as pedicures, manicures, and facial masks. Hey, and I get my share of pedicures and manicures, my facial masks. But I really want to take you on what I feel is the bedrock. The bedrock is sleep. In all my years of lecturing, it's been now 17 years, 7 countries. You'd be surprised. I've never heard anyone say they have a health goal to get more sleep. Usually it's, I want to kick the smoking habit. I want to lose 5 pounds. I want to start working out. I want to be able to do a burpee. I want to be able to do a chin up. Never have I heard someone say, I want to sleep 8 hours a night. It just doesn't happen. And the funny thing is, sleep is the foundation which everything else is made. I remember I got a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and in my first year in intro psych back in the 80s, the professor said, with Abraham Maslow, he has a hierarchy of human needs. The foundation is physiology. All the rest are nice, going for more, altruism, fulfillment. And here we are as healthcare providers, want the best for our team, want the best for our patients, want the best for humanity. But the bedrock is physiology. So what happens is, if you're starving your body of good nutrition, if you're starving your body of sleep, if you're starving your body of hydration, if you're starving your body of lack of regular movement, guess what? It's like a Lamborghini, but instead of 4 wheels, you got 3 wheels. And even the Ford Taurus is going to pass you if your physiology is not taken care of. So when I talk about sleep, I don't just make it an add-on. I start from there. This is the bedrock. To give you an idea how non-healthcare professionals know this, the Guinness Book of Records about 8 years ago took out sleep deprivation records. You know why? Because they found them too dangerous. Okay, so they're not doctors. But what they found out though, they said sleep deprivation records, people going 2, 3, 4, 5 nights without sleep, are too deadly for the humans trying to break records. So you're thinking, how's that possible? But guess what they left in? Baumgartner, they allowed his record to stay in, and a lot of other dangerous records, like being in a room with 120 poisonous snakes for 12 hours. So Baumgartner actually skydived from 120,000 feet. So they deemed that safer than pulling an all-nighter. And I know many of you have pulled all-nighters. I know you're passionate about your goals and dreams. But if Guinness Book of Records says it's more dangerous to pull an all-nighter than to skydive from 120,000 feet, you might have to re-articulate, you might have to recalibrate your priorities. And that's where I am. I'm at the basement. And the basement basically is the foundation. Every building, whether it's 70, 100 stories, 120 stories, it's the foundation that's put in first. We're all going for more, but guess what? You're dehydrated, you're starving your body of whole foods, you're getting poor quality of sleep, getting 4 hours a night. And you know how many times I've heard smart people say, I can get by on 4? Well, I can get by living under a bridge, but I'm not going to thrive living under a bridge. And I think many of us in this whole Western world, we hold it on to sleep. Hey, I don't have to sleep. Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And we wear it like a machismo. But when I hear someone say they'll sleep when they're dead, I'm thinking when you're dead is going to come sooner than later, because all the neuroscientists right at this time, Berkeley, Stanford, sleep medical specialists are saying, we're not just talking apnea. We're talking about the fact that people are getting poor quality and poor quantity of sleep. And just give you a little heads up as an intro. These are things that are impacted when you're a short sleeper. Creativity. All creativity happens when your brain is organizing left and right brain and past experiences and coordinating with present knowledge. It happens during REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. They say we need about 100 minutes a night. Guess what? If you're getting less than 7 hours, you're not getting your 100 minutes a night. So if you haven't had a good idea lately, look at how much you're sleeping. People say, Uche, where do you get these ideas from? Hey, I'm a 7 to 9 hour guy a night. I'm a 7 to 9 hours. So creativity, guess what? Growth hormone. Who doesn't want to look young and lean? Who doesn't want to have less body fat? You know, they've actually shown that adipose tissue is one of the most inflammatory things in the body. Walter Willett, Harvard School of Public Health professor, medical doctor, PhD, said one of the most inflammatory things we have in us is our excess adipose tissue. You're inflamed because 50% of the immune cells in an obese person, which is 1 out of 3 people, is macrophages. Macrophages are very inflammatory, hyperinflammatory cell. And so 1 out of 3 North Americans are full of inflammatory immune cells. And they wonder why they have eczema and psoriasis and, you know, scratchy heads and, you know, foggy thoughts. Well, at nighttime, the body actually placates that. It's like it's a nightly dousing the flames of inflammation. So poor sleepers have background levels of chronic systemic inflammation. It's like a fire that doesn't go out. And you wonder why your garage is catching fire all the time. Meanwhile, you have the fireworks next to the gasoline, next to the matches. And you're like, hey, the fire department's at my garage every night. Hey, get the gasoline away from the fireworks next to the matches. Oh yeah, my barbecue's always on. Oh yeah. Do you sleep much? No. I can get by on 5, okay? So creativity is gone with poor sleep. Your background levels of chronic inflammation. Guess what? You have a weaker immune system. We're in full pandemic flow. You know, we're talking about 3 million people globally died of COVID. But guess what? You have a weaker immune system if you're not getting 7 to 9 hours. You've actually shown at the University of California, you have 70% less natural killer cells if you get less than 5 hours sleep a night. You have 70%. Natural killer cells are powerful parts of your white blood cells. They're like General Schwarzkopf. They are the Navy SEALs of your body. Well, you have 70% less after a night of poor sleep. Growth hormones down, which means you're more likely to have hard time keeping muscle on, hard time losing body fat. And let me tell you about this muscle thing. It's not just for Arnold's and Tony Horton from P90X. Muscle loss, which is basically I call sarcopenia, for me, it's probably even more important to focus on than osteoporosis and osteopenia. Because every year after 30, and I think many of us here are over 30, every year after 30, we lose about 1% of our muscle mass. And you're like, Uche, I'm 37, 7%, who cares? Hey, the 6-year-old guy, that's 30% muscle mass. The 7-year-old person, that's almost half your muscle mass. And you're thinking, Uche, do I need muscle? I'm not lifting weights. Hey, you need muscle to squeeze a handshake. You need muscle to carry on. You need muscle to feel relevant with posture. You know, when you think of muscle and good posture, this is youth and enthusiasm. This is apologetic. Who do people want to listen to, youth or apology? And I'm not being judgmental. All I'm saying is you can take a decade off your posture simply by increasing the strength of your rhomboids and your trapezius muscle. That being said, you don't have to be a bodybuilder working out 2 hours a day. Over the last 25 years, I've maintained my high school weight simply by working out 3 times a week for about 40 minutes a session. You know, so all these things come to play. And I think people always think about, you know, sleep as something about beauty sleep and looking good. But the reason why they call it beauty sleep is, and everyone thinks attraction is important, they've actually done studies. They've actually shown people of a spectrum of beauty, a spectrum of attractiveness. And they had a double-blind study. So the subjects didn't know what was being studied. And the people in the study didn't know what they were looking at. What they asked them was, who is more approachable? And it was like an attraction, another way for attraction. Well, everyone who slept less than 5 hours was seen as not approachable. Anyone who slept 7 to 8 hours or more was considered approachable. So they're talking actually, you look more approachable. And which healthcare provider doesn't want to look approachable? You want to be able to stand knee to knee with your patient and let them into their personal space. So that being said, I'm going to get on with this program. I really see that, you know who understands it most of all? Athletes. And you're thinking, Uche, I'm a doctor. I don't need to have muscle and have energy or be creative or have low body fat and have lots of muscle. Hey, Tom Brady outplayed a quarterback half his age a few months ago, half his age. He said sleep is his secret weapon. Everyone wants to say, hey, Tom Brady, give me your supplement regimen. Poo-poo supplements. People say, Tom Brady, give me your workout regimen. Poo-poo workout. Tom Brady, do you eat organic blueberries? Poo-poo organic blueberries. Tom Brady said getting 9 to 10 hours a night is the core of my Get Healthy program. Roger Federer 9 hours a night. Usain Bolt, 10 hours a night. Fastest man alive, not too bad, 4 gold medals. So the whole idea is if you talk about people doing well, so whether it's athletic performance or intellectual performance or professional performance, sleep is the Abraham Maslow's basement. It's the foundation, the bedrock, and it's physiology. Michael Phelps is the person I've learned the most who sleeps the most during training. It's 11 hours a night. And you're like, oh, who wants to look like that? Well, I'm saying it's his energy, and he's the most winningest athlete in Olympic history. So when you talk about asking people who do well what they do, when you talk about the habits of highly effective people, Michael Phelps is highly active, highly successful. He even has a narrow face and probably is a mouth breather, right? When you look at his face and his face form, but again, 11 hours a night. LeBron James said sleep is his secret weapon. He spends about $300,000 a year on his personal health program, from organic food, food delivery, personal training, physio, Reiki, cranial sacral, counseling. And you're like, Uche, if I don't have money to spend $300,000 a year. He makes 30 million. Well, guess what? You might approach 30 million a year if you started spending more on your personal health, okay? One of the Williams sisters, again, 9 hours a night, 9 hours a night. So where do I fit in? About 8 years ago, I had a sleep study, a polysomnography test, because I was told I snored, and ended up being that it was from my nasal passages being blocked, more from having 2 little Cairn Terriers on the bed. Well, the Cairn Terriers have since passed on to a better life, okay? And I didn't have apnea. I said I didn't need an appliance. And they said, as soon as you start breathing able through your nose, your mouth will be closed at nighttime, and you'll find yourself more energetic. To give you an idea now, this is 8 years ago. On Facebook the other day, I just posted myself. I wasn't sure I was able to do it, but I did 5 one-handed chin-ups, which is crazy. That's insane. And I think a big part of that is just me taking care of the basement, me taking care of the foundation, me taking care of the bedrock. So let me give you a little inside scoop here, just to be transparent. This is me. I don't wear my orange glasses to bed, but I do wear my sleep mask to bed, because they've actually shown the pineal gland, which is a tiny little gland, it releases melatonin. Melatonin is a big part of your strong immune system. Melatonin actually tells you, hey, it's dark, sleep deep. It's dark, sleep deep. So if you have beautiful curtains from Martha Stewart or beautiful curtains from Europe, guess what? If you have these sheer curtains and the street lights are streaming through in the middle of the night, your ancient primitive brain, Homo sapiens has been on the planet maybe for 300,000 years. And for the last 300,000 years, take away the last 30 years, as soon as the sun goes down, we're supposed to be in bed in dark. So after the sun goes down, 2 hours later, it's pitch black. This is what we've been used to for 300,000 years. And Theodos Dobzhansky, a Ukrainian geneticist, said biology is understood when you start looking at evolution. So you might think we're a modern people. However, we're more like Barney Rubble and Freddie Flintstone in our DNA and our physiology. Sure, we might have Louis Vuitton and Prada, but if we're staying up past 2 hours after sundown, 4 hours, 5 hours, if we're watching 85-inch televisions and 18-inch MacBooks and looking at our beautiful streaming on our iPhones, our brain has been told the message, it's daylight. It's daylight. You're thinking, big deal, Uche. I don't find it hard to get to sleep. Well, that's just because you're overtired. But when the second biggest insomnia is the #1 sleep disturbance. The second biggest insomnia is sleep maintenance. People getting up at 3 and 4, unable to get back to bed. And it's a hallmark of the 55 plus crowd. So at 50, 55 plus, you're reaching the zenith of your productivity as a healthcare professional. 50 plus, you have a little salt and pepper in your hair. You got so much effectiveness and productivity. And now you're actually sabotaging it by not being able to go back to bed at 3:30, 4 o'clock when you wake up. And you think, Uche, is it because I'm having a spiritual awakening like Deepak says? No. It's because before you go to bed, the light's too bright, your curtains are too sheer, your room is too hot. And also before bedtime, you're looking at your laptop. Blue light is actually killing us. They've actually shown that 2 hours of laptop use without a screen that mutes the blue light, decreases melatonin production by 27%. And you think, what's 27%? Hey, if I could increase your income by 27% this year, would you be happy? Yeah. So if I lowered it by 27%, would you be unhappy? Yeah. So if you're looking at a laptop for as little as 2 hours before bed without having any dimmer, or if you're looking at your iPhone or Android phone without changing the screen to make it amber or less powerful, 27% less melatonin. What does that translate into? Less deep sleep, less testosterone, less growth hormone. Ladies trying to get pregnant, follicle releasing hormone, 27% less follicle releasing hormone with a nighttime of poor sleep. All these things are sabotaging us. So my whole idea, you can see why I'm getting passionate, and I can hardly wait to get to bed at night. And most of us think, I have to get to sleep. I want you to start creating a shift in how you look at things. Because when you create a shift in how you look at things, a shift in perception leads to miracles. Because like Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So if sleep is something that you get to do, you can actually treat it with more respect than an afterthought. And if you're out with a bunch of friends and you brag about getting less than 7 hours, I want you to think a little differently next time. So most of us, if you had a business partner and she would say, oh, I can get by on 5 hours sleep a night, we'd brag about it. We say, oh, you should see my partner. She only gets 4 hours sleep a night. Well, what they've shown, Matthew Walker, neuroscientist out of Berkeley, said, people getting less sleep are more likely to steal from you. They're more likely to participate in negative chatter or gossip. 3, they're more likely to have absenteeism. They're more likely to steal your stapler, okay? So that being said, lack of sleep, less creativity, poor hormone imbalance, poor neurotransmitters, so less serotonin, which is the key for emotional intelligence. So that being said, from now on, aim for 7 to 9 hours. So a big part of this, and I always like to bring the microbiome in. It's a little known area of the human body. The sad part is the average Joe is not going to get to know about the microbiome for a decade from now. In the meantime, I've hacked into my microbiome now for the last 3 to 4 years. They've actually shown if your gut flora is upset, if your gut flora is disrupted, if your gut flora is annoyed, and you're thinking, Uche, what the hell is gut flora? And it's not just taking psyllium husk and Metamucil. Gut flora is the 100 trillion single-celled organisms that call your body home. You're thinking, Uche, I went to Harvard. I can outsmart the gut flora. Oh, really? Well, bacteria have been on the planet for 3.5 billion years. They were messaging and talking to each other with insulin and GABA billions of years ago. There's 100 trillion in your body, about 1,000 to 2,000 species of bacteria with a collective genetic footprint of 8 million genes. You know how many genes you and I have? We have 21,000 protein coding genes. So when you think about it, you're like, Uche, bacteria don't have a brain. Yeah, they may not have a brain, but they have a consciousness. And if their consciousness suspects that there's more pathogenic bacteria than they should, like think of E. coli or C. difficile or H. pylori, the wrong kind, guess what? You'll either die from bloody diarrhea or you will actually have erosions in your stomach. So it's all built on a balance. And guess what? Your bacteria are very sensitive to the circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is the light-dark cycle. And it's all assessed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a small clump of cells, 20,000 neurons only. And when it's light outside, the body's awake, gut flora is working. And guess what? When it's dark out, your gut flora, they don't rest. At nighttime, you know when the gut flora sometimes is the most active? Doesn't mean your stomach's gurgling. The bacteria on a cellular level. During dreaming, when you're dreaming, your gut flora is working at a more intense than when you're awake. You know what happens when you're dreaming? Your body's processing emotion and it's processing memory. People say, Uche, how do you memorize this stuff? How are you doing it? Well, guess what? You go to bed with an empty stomach. You start eating more fiber. You start having a muted screen on your laptop in the last 4 hours before bedtime. You go to bed with a room that's dark. You go to bed with a temperature, a Fahrenheit maybe of 65 degrees. You go to bed in the time zone where you live. That's why when you're away from home, this is why one of the reasons why road warriors always age accelerated fashion. This is why road warriors always don't look very good. This is why road warriors, if they don't take care of themselves, look like ET eventually. So the whole idea being though, if you're on the road and you have a messed up light dark cycle, and if you're used to pooping at 7 a.m. and now you're in Maui pooping at 2 a.m., guess what? Your gut flora is annoyed. And guess what gut flora do? They don't just help you poop. Guess what they also do? They help make up to 16 different neurotransmitters. 90% of serotonin is made in the GI tract. Guess what? Your gut flora, they've actually shown this now. This is Dr. Mazmanian's work, Emran Mayer in California, Robin Chutkin out of Colombia. They've actually shown that your gut flora actually train your immune system. 80% of the cellular constituents of the immune system is in the GI tract, 80%. So what happens is your gut flora talk to your immune system through the Treg cells, the T regulatory cells. When your gut flora is happy, when they are blissed out, when they are zenned out, that communication is very smart. When your gut flora is upset, starved because you're not eating enough fiber, which is 95% of you, when your gut flora is upset, being on the road 2 to 4 hours away from your central place where you live in, your language with the immune system is not as strong. And now you have poor communication. And now you have a weak immune system. And you have an immune system I often call what's called, they participate in what's called friendly fire. Friendly fire is when the enemy, you don't actually kill the enemy, you shoot your own guys. And you shoot your own guys because you're tired and disoriented. Your immune system gets tired and disoriented when your gut flora are irritated. Gut flora don't have a brain, but they have a consciousness. So that being said, there's ways you can actually create harmony with your gut flora. One of them is by taking probiotics. And I'm not saying that probiotics is a panacea. But what they have shown, though, it helps to create stability in the species. And probiotics also helps with antibiotic-associated diarrhea. And thinking, AAD, diarrhea, who cares? Well, if you're having exploding diarrhea, that's not a GI tract that's at peace. Your GI tract, when you have diarrhea, is inflamed. You've actually shown that if you have occasional constipation and diarrhea throughout the month, what happens is you're more likely to have metabolic syndrome, poor immune system health, poor energy, foggy thoughts, and accelerated aging. Have I got your attention? Yeah, let's keep going here. So how much sleep do we need? How much sleep do we need? You know, and I said before, most think, going to bed is for weaklings. I don't know how many people at Visit CEOs used to say, hey, I only get 4 hours sleep. That's all I need. The weak ones get 7 and 8. Well, guess what? From what they're reading now from sleep scientists, and we're just talking apnea and episodic hypoxia, we're talking just poor quality and poor quantity sleep. And this is the most things. I used to be the same way. To give you an idea how sophomoric I used to be. So back about 10 years ago, I used to brag how little sleep I needed. I mean, again, I've been there. I was in kindergarten with my sleep about a little over a decade ago. And one of my mentors, Paul Check, was talking in the front of the room. And he said, if you're getting less than 7 hours a night, you have less testosterone, you're not as creative, you're less bright, and you're going to participate in digging your own grave. And I'm like, why is that? He said, because at nighttime, there's a thing called the glymphatic system. The glymphatic system is the sewer system for your brain. Sure, it's active during the day, but at nighttime, it's up to 20 times more active. The glymphatic system is up to 20 times more active at nighttime. So what it does is it removes beta amyloid plaque and towel tangles and bacteria and cellular debris. So someone who sleeps 4 hours a night compared to someone who sleeps 8 hours a night, the 8 hours a night person will have a cleaner brain. And now you're going, okay, that's kind of embarrassing because I've gotten 5 hours a night for the last 10 years. Yeah, well, you got a dirty brain. You got a brain that the body's never been able to clean out. Can you imagine if you've never purged, there's always a drawer in your kitchen that looks embarrassing. There's always a drawer in your office. It's embarrassing when people go in looking for a stapler. Well, guess what? Your brain looks like that drawer if you've been getting less than 7 hours for the last 10 years. Dr. David Perlmutter, he talked about the fact that the dementia is basically a brain on fire, and it's a lifetime of being on fire. And simply, with all things held equal, all confounding variables taken out, it's a fact it's never been allowed to do a spring cleaning. You know what it's like? You move out of your home you've lived in for 40 years, and you go into it thinking, oh, it'll take the weekend to purge all the crap, and you realize this might take the summer. That's how most people's brains are. And they got big dreams and goals. They got ideas. They got patents they're trying to do. Maybe so many patents are pending because you have a brain that's full of beta amyloid plaque and towel tangles. Well, that being said, that waste system, that's probably the number one thing you can improve by getting to bed tonight between 7 and 9 hours. And you're thinking, Uche, I know I get by on less. I know I can. I know I can. Well, guess what? I don't think you can. Unless you have the gene BHLE41. People with the gene BHLE41 are able to get less than 4 hours a night and still function. You're thinking, Uche, I have that gene. No, you don't. They said it's so rare, it's basically almost 0% of people. So again, people talk about getting by on 6. oh, I get by on 6 during the week and I catch up on the weekend. Well, you're not listening to the new science, because you cannot get into a sleep debt. You cannot repair a sleep debt Saturday and Sunday. So if you've been deficient 4, 5, 6 hours during the week, you might think you're catching up 8, 9, 10 hours, but you're going against 300,000 years of human history. They've actually said that after 4 to 5 nights of 6 hours sleep, your brain thinks you've actually pulled an all-nighter, okay? There's 1.2 million car accidents every year. The majority of them are from poor sleep and sleep-deprived people. This is the National Traffic Safety Board. Do you know that more people get killed on the road than people who are on drugs or drunk? Sleep kills more drivers on the road than drunk drivers and people on illicit drugs. And why are we not talking about it? I don't know. We don't talk about a whole lot of things that are important. Anyway, let me give you another idea. If you're a CEO and you want to know how I can help, you say, Uche, I'm not a firefighter. I'm a healthcare professional. Well, firefighters, police officers, they did really good studies, one of the first of its kind, about 11 years ago. What they did was they found out, though, there's a higher mortality rate in firefighters and first responders because of the negative impact of stress. You're like, Uche, aren't we talking about sleep? Let me finish, okay? They've actually shown, so if you're stressed out, you have higher levels of cortisol. For an extended period of time now, it leads to feelings of helplessness and a perception of unable to control. So in a crisis, people who are stressed out and have no means of managing their stress end up making more mistakes. They also have more cardiometabolic problems and psycho-emotional disturbances, which means they often have up to a 10 years shorter life because of the hormonal problems and cardiovascular problems. But at the same time, though, they've actually shown, again, first study of its kind, fit firefighters. So think of fit doctors. Fit firefighters had a lower cortisol, had a better, they were better able to manage cortisol than people who are unfit. So one of the reasons why they want police officers to be fit and military and the Navy SEALs, you know, the reason why they want people to be fit is not just to look good for the office picture, it's because they want you to be better during a crisis. And my analogy is people during a crisis who are fit, you know, in a hurricane, there's the eye of the storm. Well, when you're fit, when you do regular physical activity, your brain, your physiology, your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system is still in the eye of the storm. When you're still in the eye of the storm, you can tap into left-right brain, past information. You can integrate that with present moment information. And guess what? You make less mistakes. Isn't this powerful? So do you think as a doctor, it might be a good idea to work out? So not just for your high school reunion, it's so when during a crisis, you can't find an instrument or there's a power failure, right? Your brain stays still in the eye of the storm and let everyone else be helter-skelter around you while you yourself are the Richard Branson. You know, you are the person stoically being able to center yourself. This is such cool stuff. This is such powerful stuff. This is the first study of its kind. So it's about 9, 10 years ago, but powerful. High levels of cortisol shrinks your hippocampus. You're thinking, Uche, where's my hippocampus? Well, you have 2 of them, okay? And the hippocampus is the seat of your memory. And it's during the rapid eye movement time, chiefly at night, and that's why we need 100 minutes a night. It's during that time that the body sends memories from short-term to the prefrontal cortex to long-term memory. Cortisol shrinks your hippocampus. They've done autopsies on people with Alzheimer's and dementia, and their hippocampus on autopsy are often half the size. So if you don't exercise, which is 85% of the population, what happens is your hippocampus is shrinking away. And you wonder why you can't remember more than 3 phone numbers. Well, guess what? If you want to have that kind of abacus mind, I would say participate regularly in physical activity. You're like, Uche, thought this was a sleep hack. Well, guess what? People who are physically active have an easier time getting to bed at night because they're managing what? Cortisol. They're managing cortisol. People who exercise have lower muscular tension. People who exercise often spend less time in sympathetic dominance and more time in parasympathetic dominance. Sympathetic dominance is accelerated aging. It's crisis. All resources for present moment danger. People who are fit spend more time in parasympathetic. Rest, digest, growth, and repair. So what do you want to stay on? Accelerated aging? Rest and repair? I think the answer is obvious. So sleep is a part of that. Sleep is a huge part of that. Anytime you can actually dial down cortisol and your body's ability to manage stress, your sympathetic nervous system, and for many people, you know, to talk about stress being a key player up to 95% of illnesses. Not a causal player, but a key player in throwing gas on the fire is being sympathetic dominant. From prostatitis to any disease that has inflammation at its core, the sympathetic nervous system says, hey, who cares about your immune system? We got to get you through the night. So that's okay though. You don't need to worry about the cancer or the heart disease when you're getting through the night of a storm. However, if you're angry, frustrated, irritated, resentful, greedy, jealous all the time, guess what? Your immune system is on standby, which is not very good in terms of a pandemic, but also not very good in terms of aging. A big part of immune system health is needed for growth and repair. So that being said, let me go on. I'm going to show you. What do I show you now? I want to show. Let me go to. So how much time do I have, Bill? Just to get an idea. Where do I?
Well, you're doing good. You've got 5-10 minutes more if you want that.
Okay, cool. Okay. Only another 40 slides. I'm just kidding. So I think a lot of people, and I know we use this as a way to dial down our brain. I'll be in front of 1,000 people and I'll say, who here believes in the nightcap? And I'm not sure people think their parents are watching or their patients are there, but out of 1,000 people, 4 people put up their hand. And I'm like, anyone else drink a nightcap? And everyone's kind of chuckling. 4 people put up their hand. I'm like, the red juice or the brown juice in the glass with you shake it around. And then also 2 more people put up their hand. You know what? The nightcap might help you get to sleep because it does actually, increase HDL. The alcohol actually does relax you slightly. However, this is the downside of the nightcap. The downside of the nightcap is, and it's never a good idea, it helps you go to sleep quick, but it doesn't help you stay asleep. It's more likely to fragment your sleep. So what do you think is better? Sleeping like a 10-year-old for 12 hours, where you're healing, skin looking good, integrating memory, great immune system, or sleeping like someone who gets up 9 times a night because of benign prostate disease, and it's called nocturia, where they just can't, getting up to pee, and guess what? No pee's coming out. Their sleep is so light. The little amount of irritation in their bladder makes them want to go to the bathroom. Guess what? Accelerated aging, brain fog, lack of creativity, sarcopenia, weaker immune system. Yeah, accelerated aging. Alcohol before bedtime also suppresses REM. And people think, what's the big deal if I dream less? Well, when they talk about night terrors, I mean, they talk about not necessarily night terrors, but that whole thing when people go cold turkey on alcohol and all those nightmares coming back, they've had suppressed dreaming for the last decade to 20, 30 years. So when you're suppressing REM, rapid eye movement sleep, you have lower creativity and you're unable to process emotion as well. So this is where you start realizing maybe that nightcap's not such a good idea. I'm not saying never have a drink. I like my Pinot Noir sometimes at 9, 10 o'clock at night, but ideally the alcohol should be with dinner, or if you're gonna have it with a bit of protein or fat so you don't get the blood sugar spike and the pancreas pumping out insulin to take it away from you. So that being said, it also relaxes muscles of the pharynx, which makes you snore more. They've now called snoring also a sleep problem because it interrupts oxygen to your brain. Anything interrupts oxygen to your brain is basically killing you because interruption of oxygen to your brain can be deadly. You're like, Uche, it's just snoring. Well, one time someone asked me, what's the most valuable thing in the world? And I said, what do you think it is? It was a person in the class. I did a little talk for a grade 1 class. And I said, what's the most valuable thing in the world? He said, is it oil? Another little boy said, is it diamonds? And I said, no, it's not. And they said, what is it? I said, well, you can live without diamonds, but you can't live a night without sleep. And they said, isn't it water? No, you can go 4 days without water. They said, isn't it food? And I said, no, you can go 30 days without food. They said, isn't it love? Some people go a lifetime without love, okay? All I being is, though, you can't go more than 45 seconds without taking a breath. Oxygen is the most valuable thing in your world. I don't care how much you love your spouse. I don't care how much you love your business partner. I don't care how much you love your team. Oxygen is more important than your team. Yeah, how your body handles oxygen. So if you're snoring away and disrupting oxygen flow to your brain, guess what? Higher levels of cortisol. High levels of cortisol puts you into sympathetic nervous system dominance. Sympathetic nervous system dominance, now you undergo what's called accelerated aging. And who wants to look like ET when you're 40, okay? I know by age, 85, 90, 95, that's to be expected. But who wants to look like that little guy when you're 35, 40 years of age? So that being said, maybe I'll leave that because that's like a a whole other topic here. Let me go to, we'll do this because I want to make sure I get to people that make a difference. And again, I'm focusing on athletes, but I'll get past the athletes. So, here's a gentleman lived till 94. 94. The whole idea being, though, when you're hacking into your body and tapping into the inherent wisdom and the genius of your body, guess what your body's able to do? It's able to live a long time. So you have a long life. But everyone says, Uche, who wants to live a long life? I don't want to live till 100. I said, I'm talking lucid thoughts. I'm talking good posture. I'm talking muscle tone. I'm talking good hormonal health. So when you're really healthy, you have what's called a compression of morbidity. So Jack LaLanne was 94. Then when he passed away, he got pneumonia and he died within 3 or 4 days. So that's the way to go. Long period of health and maybe a 3-day decline. A 10 to 20 year goodbye is okay for Cher's farewell tour. It's not so good that you want to participate in. Nelson Mandela in his 90s, what does he have? Energy. Energy is what you have if you sleep deeply. Energy is what you have if you have a good testosterone, growth hormone, and a good immune system. Energy is what you have if you're able to absorb all the nutrients that you actually eat. So the whole idea being, you don't necessarily have to look like Sting, and Sting's a part of that. But when you think about disrupting the light-dark cycle and making your super chiasmatic nucleus 20,000 neurons strong, guess what the circadian rhythm does? It modulates 25% of your 21,000 protein coding genes. So this is why road warriors never look that good. When I'm flying back into Toronto after 2 or 3 days of being away lecturing, I look around the plane as we're landing. Everyone looks like ET. You get into a plane after, on a red eye. When you get into a plane at 6 o'clock in the morning and a red eye flight's getting off, what does that plane smell like? Yeah, that is death. Okay, so people are killing themselves basically by messing with the light-dark cycle. You can get away with it for one trip. But if you're speaking in 20, 30, 40 cities a year, you better hack into the inner wisdom of your body. One of the really good books I like is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Excellent neuroscientist out of Berkeley, California. Okay. So let me give you just a few sleep hacks here, just so you can kind of track with me here. So cool, dark room is important. Cool, dark room. No TV in the bedroom. So I don't care if you make $1 million a year, get that 85-inch 4K smart TV out of the bedroom. They've actually shown people with big TVs in the bedroom are usually not having that much sex. Let me get that's another study. They said the bigger the TV, the less sex you're having in the bedroom. Okay. Also, the bigger the TV, the more chance you're awakening your brain. And what happens is when you have an awake brain right before bed, less time in deep sleep. Okay. Warm bath before bed. You're thinking, Ooch, I thought warm room is not good. Well, the warm bath warms up your body, but it's your body forcibly trying to cool itself. So they've actually shown people with insomnia have usually higher body temperatures. But when you heat up your body artificially with a warm bath, that coolness, that cooling that your body does to cool itself actually brings on sleep. Exercise earlier in the day. And again, nighttime is okay for maybe Tai Chi, maybe a little bit of yoga, or if I'm doing a program at a conference, I call it Uchi, okay? So it's my version of Tai Chi combined with yoga, but it's a fun series of stretches. So you can do that right before bed, but do not save the Navy SEAL boot camp, burpee, chin-up exercises for morning time when your cortisol is dominant and you can actually tap into hormonal wisdom. That's the best time to exercise. The second best time is after work between 4 and 8 p.m. if you want to tap into your body's inner wisdom and have the most growth. No alcohol right before bed, no food before bed. Food and digestion is a massive amount, it takes a massive amount of energy. So if your body's taking a massive amount of energy to digest food, guess what? It's not going to be the same repairing and growing over nighttime. So biggest meal, 3 to 4 hours away from bedtime. You can have maybe a couple of maybe gluten-free crackers or maybe an apple or some kefir, which is a fermented beverage, which makes your gut flora happy. University of Colorado study last year showed that if you're eating the correct amount of fiber, and women, you need about 25 grams a day, men 35 grams a day. And if you want to get an idea, what's the percentage of people who eat that amount? 3%. They've actually shown only 3% of people eat the correct amount of fiber. For the last 300,000 years, away from the last 50 years, the last 300,000 years, cavemen and cavewomen back 10, 20, 50, 100,000 years ago had up to 100 grams of fiber every day. So our bodies, for the majority of our Homo sapien time on Earth, have been used to 100 grams of fiber. Nowadays, average adults, 10 to 12 grams. Guess who's being starved? Guess who's being starved? Your microbiome. You look at Uche, is that why the microbiome is so important? Well, we've only scratched the surface. You know, the first phase of the Human Microbiome Project was just finished at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. So what they found out was, and this is Dr. Mazmanian's work in California, he was saying that they actually now realize when you think of your health being up here, and everyone knows your genes impact your health. Well, they're now saying your microbiome, the 100 trillion single-celled organisms that call you home, now they're saying impacts your health as much as your genes do. And that's why if you don't eat for gut flora health, and most people don't care because the average woman, the average man, adult, actually eats about 10 to 12 to 15 grams of fiber a day, literally starving their bacteria from fermenting fiber, where they make all kinds of short chain fatty acids and anti-inflammatory compounds. Anyway, leave that for my full day lecture. No caffeine before 9 hours before bed, because caffeine is a half-life of 9 hours. And you have a big 200 milligram cup at 2 o'clock. Guess what? You have 100 milligrams surging through your body at 10 o'clock at night. So that being said, orange glasses, yeah, orange glasses. Uche, what's that all about? Yeah, Abraham Lincoln liked his orange glasses. Bono liked his orange glasses. Yeah, for sure. Sleep Smarter, another good book. So that being said, I'm just gonna finish up here because I want to make sure I get to some questions. I think what we got to do is tap into our innerism of our body. So many of us, when you think about hiring a consultant, most professionals think of it, you know, I'm doing fine. I'm going to go do 9 holes. Just take care of my team. Well, guess what? The trickle-down effect works in the office because the leader, the CEO, the doctor, this is where it all starts. So you got to start with you. It's really the only corner of this universe where you have control is over yourself. Change begins with you, right? Change begins with you. This is what Aldous Huxley talked about in his books several decades ago. So that being said, I have lots of cool stuff I want to show you. I'm showing this picture only because that's me 25 years ago. I weighed about 220 pounds. I was probably my BMI was about 30. And on the right, that's me just last year at about 178 pounds. And I've maintained that weight loss for the last 2.5 decades without counting calories, without worrying about my macros, simply by hacking into the inherent wisdom of my body. Just to give you some context stuff, Bill, that's my Instagram there, at Fit Speakers. So at Fit Speakers is my Instagram. Tooth Boss, I wrote an article with a hygienist because hygienists understand prevention. So Tooth Boss is a hygienist in Toronto. We wrote a book called Gut-Friendly Chairside Conversations. And it's all about how to have an authentic communication with your patient. And again, any patient, you know, no matter what kind of healthcare professional you have, the microbiome, the gut, impacts everything. Because when your gut is at peace and it's stable, what happens is gut inflammation goes down, less chance of type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome goes down, your body's able to sleep deeper, immune system is stronger. So tell me which healthcare area doesn't need a healthy gut microbiome. Anyways, that's a great article I wrote. So those are my 2 contacts. That's my email. That's my website. And that being said, sleep well tonight and douse those flames of inflammation. So that being said, Bill, let's do some chatting. And I'm sure I've stirred up some good questions. I know your abacus mind is firing there, all 100 billion neurons. So let's chat.
All righty, good. And we really do enjoy something that relates to self-care. We're inundated with how to care for our patients. That's about what 99.9% of CE is all about, is how to take care of other people. And it's refreshing to get somebody that can say, hey, I know how to take your own body and make it better so it's more efficient, more effective. And I like what you started out with when you said, I can make sure that you achieve peak performance by working on your own self. You can double your efficiency in your practice just by being a better you. So we started out right and we fulfilled our promise to give people a real prescription for their own success. I had a question about a couple of things. I really agree with you on the microbiome and the importance. It's not been brought out in much of the literature until very recently. So the microbiome plays a much bigger role than most, if they have been in their university training in not too recent past. If they're a seasoned practitioner, they might not have kept up with their literature on the microbiome. And there's a lot coming out recently definitely. So I'm glad you brought that up. The question I have about, have you heard of the redox molecule and the effect on the mitochondria with the effect of increasing gene expression? Is that something that has crossed your path?
Yeah, no, I've heard of that. I haven't studied it to that depth that you're talking about. And again, what I do, and I like to look at foundational items. When they talk about mitochondrial health, they've actually shown you can actually epigenetically turn back on mitochondria that are turned off simply by having an exercise program. So by age 55, for most people, if they've been inactive, half of the mitochondria are no longer functioning well. And that's basically most people think 55, 60, I have no more energy. Let's take pictures of the kids. Me and my spouse will sit by the barbecue, pop in cans of Coors Light. Well, they think that's just expected. What they've shown is though, if you do physical activity, especially interval training combined with resistance training, you can actually epigenetically turn back on your mitochondria. So that's what I call hacking into the inherent wisdom. So that's one way to get your mitochondria working. The other way is there's a thing called ergothioneine. Ergothioneine is an amino acid. We've known about it for 100 years. It's not a supplement, but ergothioneine actually has been shown to purge free radicals from the liver, the bone marrow, and the mitochondria. Mitochondria are very active, it's a very active cell in the body. And what happens is it has a lot of oxidative stress and a lot of exhaust. So anytime you're able to purge free radicals, you can actually make it function better. Also, mitochondria can function better if you do something called intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting is eating like our cavemen and cave women did hundreds of thousands of years ago. We didn't eat all day long. That whole idea about grazing, which we did in the 90s, 6 meals a day, is now seen as being tired. Just like they used to say supplement vitamin E. Now I know supplementing with vitamin E is a dumb idea. So, and that's why I call it nutritional practice, just like medical practice and dental practice. We're always learning and evolving, never arriving. We're always elucidating and integrating information from many different places. So the redox itself, again, I wouldn't be able to talk more than 30 seconds on it. But if you're talking mitochondrial health, I'm thinking intermittent fasting, interval training, and ergothioneine. And ergothioneine is the best natural source is mushrooms. So mushrooms is the food source with the highest amount of ergothioneine. And that's why they're actually thinking of making ergothioneine a vitamin. Vitamin B12 was named in 1948. And for the last 7 years, we haven't talked about one since. They're actually thinking of calling ergothioneine a vitamin because its powerful impact on the lens of the eye, the liver, the mitochondria, and bone marrow. But redox, if you want to share about redox, you can let me know what you know about redox. I'm open to learning. I'm a curious guy.
Well, I put in about a year of study on redox a year ago. And so I ran across Dr. Lee Osler, who was one of the founders of American Academy of Oral Systemic Health and past president. And just about 3 weeks ago, we had him on this same program, the Podinar, discussing redox and its formation, how it affects the glutathione and the superoxide mutase, and increases the function in the cellular systems, in the mitochondria specifically, and it increases the amount of glutathione up to 400%. Just the supplementation with the redox additional molecules, something that's naturally occurring in the body. And so I would refer people that are interested in redox, as you say. It's a deep subject, and we did a roundtable on it just about 3 weeks ago. And Dr. Lee Osler is the resource guy for that. You're right on target with what you say about mitochondria health. And it's the basement of all metabolism is what happens in the mitochondria. Depends on where you're going in life. It's right up there with sleep. It's right up there with oxygen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, mitochondria. I've heard cardiologists. I got a few cardiologists as patients, and they say you're only as healthy as your arteries. You're only as healthy as your arteries. And I read a book by Martin Gabala, he's an exercise kinesiologist. He said the heart is the most important muscle. The brain is the most important organ. And I have 7 psychiatrists as patients. And they all say, oh, the mind is where it's at. You need 100 billion neurons. So each of us talks from their silo. So my gift, and I'm saying gift with all humility, is that I like to integrate things. Because I'm certified as a trainer, a yoga instructor, and a boot camp instructor, I've had 30 years as an athlete. a dentist for a little over 25 years now, and I'm still active. When I show my activity, I don't show my high school or my college, yearbook. I'm saying this is me now, this is me now, 9% body fat. So I integrate it all together, and I love when I integrate it, I'm better able to create a shift in perception. So I don't just say the mind is where it's at, the heart's where it's at, hormonal health is where it's at, but I do know mastering diet is key. Mastering your food intake is probably a master key to enjoying this life. Getting to bed on time is a master key. Breathing deep. I just read a book called Breath by James Clear. I can't go more than 45 seconds without breathing. So if you want to talk about importance, breath is number one. So pulmonary efficiency, which can be best improved by doing interval training. And I have a great article on, it's free available if you want to email me. It's an article on interval training. And that's probably the quickest way to get fit fast. And as little as 5 minutes a day, which is crazy. So that being said, integrating all this information is probably one of the best ways to get to where you want to be, so you can be the most effective healthcare provider. But no, I love Lee Osler. He's a good guy. I've chatted with him, and as talking with him, time flies. We talk about all kinds of cool topics. So smart guy.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the breath thing, because our first lecturer of the series in the Podnars was Dr. Idris Modi in India, and he was specifically talking about breath therapy and the importance of yoga and things that go along with the whole concept of a proper breathing technique. So you're right on target every time. You're integrating everything together that's been said, and I think you're a fantastic resource. How do you feel about the subject of consciousness and where it lies in the brain? That's a little bit of a jump from the body, but you seem to have a grasp of a lot of things. What do you think about where does consciousness lie?
Great question. I've heard Deepak Chopra say it lies outside of yourself, and you tap into a consciousness. I've heard him say consciousness is inherently why we're all one, universe, one voice. Consciousness is there before we're born. So that being said, it's quite the esoteric subject. If I said I'm going to do a class tonight on how to lose 5 pounds, I'll have 1,000 people sign up. If I said I'm going to do a class tonight on developing your consciousness, 2 people will show up. Maybe you, Lee Osler, and Dr. Shaw. So it's pretty much a very esoteric subject. But that being said, you got to take care of your body. And I think a lot of people with genius often don't take care of their body. I got a patient named Alan, actuarial mathematician, PhD, got a master's in astronomy after age 65. And his body is basically just kind of starting to kind of crumble and fall apart. And his wife, he now lives in a separate nursing home. He lives in a nursing home now because he can't take care of his body. And his wife said he's so upset. He was taking care of his mind his whole life, and he thought his body was just going to take care of itself. So here's a smart person thinking the body takes care of itself. It doesn't take care of itself. You got to feed it, rest it, hydrate it, breathe right. So let it be. So you got to look at all aspects of it. And I think when people say, Uche, how are you doing? I say, what sphere? And they go, how are you doing? I said, well, financially, intellectually, socially, physically, spiritually. So consciousness is a beingness. And I think we can be our most conscious when we're fully present. Like now when I'm talking to you, I don't want to be anywhere else. So I feel very present now. So I'm tapping into my inherent wisdom. They even talk about tapping into the Akashic record, which is the history of human civilization. And you have access to that when you're fully present. They say we're physically our most powerful when we're present. That's why martial artists are so into that present moment breath. They can break a board from an inch away. It's called a knockout punch. So an inch away, they can punch you so hard they knock you over. An inch away, you and I can't even make a dent in your Prada t-shirt. So being present taps into consciousness, and anytime we're more conscious, it adds more texture to life, more depth, and then you find yourself saying, "Wow, time flew by, but man, I add more texture to the moment." I think many people now who say time flies by are never fully present, and I think time flying by is all about not being present. And if I want to expand time, expand my consciousness, I get very still with my breath and breathe in through my nose and increase more nitric oxide and all those things. So consciousness is a very esoteric subject, but you got to take care of your body as well as your brain. And the two together, there's a consciousness in every cell in our bodies. Even our gut flora, without a brain, they have a consciousness.
Excellent. And let's finish up with this concept of, can the mind improve the body with thought? Can we speak things into existence? Can we improve our physiology by exercising the mind?
Okay, I love that question because I think it's bi-directional. People say thoughts are things and thoughts are the seed of everything else in our life. But again, esoteric subject, and many times, an athlete won't understand that. But what we do know though is when you start, if ever I'm feeling a little like lack of energy, if I'm going to do a podcast or a lecture, I'll do some movement first. So I'm not thinking about the lecture, or I'm nervous because I'm talking in front of Congress, or I'm nervous, I'm talking in front of some politicians, and I start moving, star jumps behind the screen. I'll do a workout in a hotel room. So I'm breathing and breathing and breathing. It releases serotonin, norepinephrine, endorphins. And now, without thinking about it, now I'm starting to have more expanded thoughts. So it's bi-directional though. So by moving your body and breathing and exercising and doing exercise, it can affect my thoughts. Now I have an expanded consciousness. However, the other way is around also. I could not move at all, but I could start thinking of a time in my life when I was the happiest. And we all have times in life when we're the happiest. And I can actually slow down my breathing. I can actually slow down my pulse. And I can then start feeling better. So thoughts affect the body affects the thought. So if I can think of my worst day, on my planet, I can increase my blood pressure and increase my pulse and increase blood sugar and cortisol and adrenaline flooding through my body. And I can actually physically age my body within a minute of thinking of my worst day. And some people stay there for an evening, a weekend, a lifetime. So definitely thoughts are things. And I think if you can think yourself sick, I certainly believe you can actually think yourself healthy.
Back in the 1980s, I heard a lecture, or I coined a term, psychoneuroimmunology, and it was to do with creating chemical substances by thinking. And one thing that impressed me was epinephrine is a chemical that's produced in our body. And epinephrine we know well in dentistry because we inject it into our patients every day. And so I put two and two together and I said, we actually put this adrenaline into people. And when they see something frightening, they have an adrenaline rush and they have the experience of fear. Well, we inject epinephrine, therefore we inject fear into our patients with every injection when we use the epi. Mm-hmm. Could it be that the fear dentistry came from the chronic use of epinephrine for vasoconstriction? Maybe people weren't afraid of dentists before epinephrine.
I like that. You think good. I like the way you think. So if someone's always having this experience and they often have heart palpitations and heart racing, they soon associate the word dentist with their heart racing. And that's, kind of like Pavlov's dog. So, and I think that's why if you can have, use sitting as plain, use plain anesthetic, or have other positive connotations, like having a really positive environment, or talk to people about what they enjoy. So you can start increasing their serotonin at the same time you talk to them. And if you breathe well, they said, the Buddhists say, if you breathe deeply and slowly, it's incompatible with feeling stressed. So I think you probably do this too. Every good dentist, when they're doing an anesthetic, what they do is I have the person actually take a deep breath in. It's hard to feel nervous taking a deep breath in. And I have my assistant just touch the shoulder gently. And that feeling of camaraderie and the deep breath, even with the epinephrine, you can actually create new associations. But you're right though, adrenaline, epinephrine, we are masters of creating fear. And we spend all our marketing getting people back in, saying, you want a good smile? I can do it pain-free. So that's where marketing comes from, and so search engine optimization, that's not my forte.
It's been a great hour, Uche. Thank you so much for the time. I think it's been one of the more elucidating lectures because it's all about you. It's all about us, and it's not always about the patient. So very refreshing. Thank you for joining us. And I want to remind everyone to look for Uche's book coming out this summer. Look at his website for more instruction. He's a fantastic keynote speaker for any of your groups out there that are looking for a speaker. I've heard him personally many times. And I also want to recall your memory about the, you know, the memory that I really would like is the one that lost just now. It's the,
You have so many things in there. You have all 100 billion neurons are
tell you
firing.
what, they all went away right there. It's this one right here. It's the trimurl.globalsummits.com. Don't forget to look that up as we finish up today, because that is particularly important for your future. And Dr. Shaw will be very impressed if you look at that and understand it. It's what we're going to be talking about all summer long, what's on the Academy. Thank you so much, Uche. You are an expert in your field, and we all are better for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.